Hi, everybody. This is Joanne Eisen with Reaching Unlimited. I am so sorry for our delay, but we were having technical issues, which tends to happen when you deal with technology. So we got it all figured out. And I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Navjit.
Navjit, yes. We're laughing because we've done some things together before.
A whole backstory to that one. I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I want to let everybody know that this could be a trigger conversation. So if you're having any kind of issues with this, then please turn it off because we're still going to have it. But it is going to be a very difficult conversation, which I had put in the description. So thank you for coming and sharing with everybody about your story and the process that you've gone through. So I'm going to let you tell everybody about your experience.
Okay, well, thank you first for inviting me to come spend some time with you and your audience. It's always wonderful to know that there are people interested in this area of life, right? Even though we're going to talk about death, but that there is something past what we call life, and you work in this field very much so. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my experience and some of the insights that I've had from my near-death experience. So my story begins with going on a holiday to celebrate my birthday and my husband's birthday to the Bahamas. And it's a wonderful, we're having a wonderful time. We have a 2-year-old son, well, almost 2-year-old son. And it's evening time. The sun is setting in front of me. There's a full moon behind me. And my son was beginning to get fussy. So I was thinking I'll just take him inside. And in the meantime, my husband and my mother-in-law were swimming, just kind of snorkeling around close to the beach. And just as I'm standing there thinking these thoughts, I felt something. And then all of this happened very quickly. As I felt something, I began to turn around. And as I turned, from behind me, there came this big ball of fire over myself and my son. And it was a plane that was exploding. And it crashed in the water. It was only about 30, 40 feet above us because it had hit electrical wires. And that's what caused it to explode. And as it went over us, it burnt us very, very badly, both myself and my son. And where it crashed, it crashed where my husband and my mother-in-law were swimming. So in that moment, all I knew was the world was ending, because how do you explain? And the sound of a plane exploding that close and the sound waves of that explosion, I couldn't make any sense of it at all in that moment. And I don't know how familiar your audience is with near-death experiences, is that when you die, you don't necessarily know that you've died, that there isn't some, celebration, trumpets welcoming you to the other side, saying you're welcome to the other side. You're officially dead now. It wasn't my experience. I don't know if you've worked with people, if they've shared what it was like, once they were crossing over. It's kind of like a seamless stream of consciousness. I was still myself. I'm still dealing with this situation. And, but I noticed that what happened was that I found myself it felt like I was thousands of miles above where I could see what was happening. Mm-hmm. And from where I was and from what I could see, I could feel my human myself thinking and feeling all these things about what was happening, like reacting, or like my body was like a headless chicken. That's what it looked like, right? It was just kind of like in this madness movement. And then as I'm seeing that, so I'm all like I'm seeing this all at the same time. I don't know how else to describe it. Like it's like parallel realities I'm seeing them, feeling them, knowing them all at once. So it's a very intense experience. So I'm seeing it all from above. I'm seeing like some of my futures are just vaporizing. Like, oh, I was going to do that, that's gone. My son was going to grow up, that's gone. My time with my husband, that's gone. Like all these things were happening at the same time. And as I'm experiencing them, I'm feeling the intense emotion of each of those losses or those things that are ending. And then what I noticed is that I heard my son screaming. And that's when I came back, because I was going. And from somewhere I heard his screams, and then I popped back in. And, to come back to an extremely burnt body is not the easiest things to come back to. And then to come back to your child who's also very badly burned is not a very comfortable thing to come back to. And not knowing if my husband has died or my mother-in-law has died. And then I'm in this situation of the agony of the burning body. And the thing with the jet fuel is that it just keeps burning. It doesn't stop. It isn't that it just like when you touch something, it stops. It continues to go. So I remember at one point just running into the water, even though the beach is just littered with fire and plane debris, the water is the same. And as soon as I go in there, I think, it'll cool us. It again is excruciating because the salt and the oil in there. So I run back out, and then it's this whole journey of how am I going to get us to safety? What am I going to do? We're on an island. And then it was like a 6-hour journey to get to a hospital, which included a boat, like a 45-minute boat ride, and then medevac plane, an hour on that, and then an ambulance ride, and all of these things that were part of that experience. And so I didn't really have time to think about what just happened. And because there wasn't a medical doctor saying, yes, you officially died, and then you came back, I didn't have any time to, all of that just got pushed to the side, because the immediate necessity of taking care of my son, taking care of my body, figuring things out. And then I would say it took me probably almost a year and a half. Well, actually longer than that. It took me about 2 to 2.5 years, I think. I can't remember exactly how long, to when I first began to realize that near-death experience. Because there was a part of me, and I think we talked about this before, that I just didn't feel like I qualified. Like I didn't have some of the markers, like the checkpoints. Like I didn't have a doctor say that, yes, you officially died. I didn't have a tunnel of white light. I didn't have any angels come and talk to me. So I just felt like whatever I experienced wasn't going to be accepted as what it was. And that made me sad, and that made me shut it all down. And I think many people have near-death experiences that they don't give themselves a permission to see what it means and how it impacts them, because they're afraid it doesn't look like the cookie cutter version of a near-death experience.
And I love that you're saying that, because we had this conversation in a room on Clubhouse. So that's what we're referring to in our past conversation. But in that experience, we found that there were other people as well that had different experiences that didn't really relate to that being as a near-death experience. And also, I think like from the conversation that you had, there was kind of a judgment in a negative way to yourself, like almost like I feel like in your conversation, and I'm going to ask you to, answer to this, but that it was like less than, or not as important, or somehow diminished you in some way.
Yeah, I think there was absolutely a judgment. It was almost like, oh, you're just trying to yeah, I was diminishing my own experience, and it almost felt like I was saying, you don't get to belong in this
Mm-hmm.
group. Who do you think you are? I mean, like in even a near death experience,
Mm-hmm.
comparing at that level, right?
Yeah.
It's
That
ridiculous, isn't
didn't
it?
come during it though. That
No,
came, and I
no,
want to make that difference, right? Because you did explain, because I know you described about going above your body and looking down, and then your son pulling you back. I know that you still have some judgment on this side, even about that experience. Like that
yeah.
wasn't good enough. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think it was that because I don't know if you have, but I have read a lot of literature about near death experiences and the kind of research that's done. And
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that people draw upon to talk about near death experiences are some very similar factors, like, oh, a tunnel of light, loved ones showing up, um, angels, and then coming back with a lot of positivity, like, oh, I know what I'm meant to do. I'm going to do good in the world, and I'm going to share. Don't be afraid. Life is good. And I think I judged myself because I came back into such a painful situation, and I felt very, yeah, I was a good person before I died.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like I already am a good person. I'm already doing that stuff. And I didn't have some guided voice tell me or hold me in that space.
Mm-hmm.
I felt, and I think I shared this with you, I felt like I was over in that space, and then whoosh, I was back.
Yeah.
I didn't get deep into the other side. I felt like I just was beginning to enter the other side, and then I came back because of my son, and also I think because of me. I don't think I was complete yet, but that, and so because of that, I judge myself to not having validated or have something to bring back that I could, oh yes, there was a tunnel of white light. I didn't have a tunnel of white light. What I felt myself was be above. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw this, like, those old carousels with the slides.
Yeah.
It was like that. That's what I saw. All these potentials of myself in all directions, and one by one they were vaporizing. That's what I experienced, all these potentials of myself, my relationships, and each time one went, it was like it was ripping out of me. And that experience there, and each experience that I felt was full and complete. It wasn't just like a thought. I experienced it. I felt it. I lived it. And so even though I might have only been gone for moments
Mm-hmm.
in the experience, it was out of time. It was out of space. And one thing I do remember thinking is that, because a part of me was wondering, like, gosh, did my husband die? Are our paths going to cross?
Mm-hmm.
My mother-in-law died, are our paths crossing, or are they, Joanne, just like, boom, they've gone in a whole different trajectory and I'm never going to see them again? And I'm trying to kind of experience, all of this is happening at the same time. And I'm wondering to myself, like, well, if they died, I would have felt it. I would know. I would know. And
Mm-hmm.
so at the same time, I'm trying to track them, trying to find them. Where are they in this cosmos? So there was just a lot going on.
There was a lot to take in during a time where you're already under extreme stress. But I'm curious about when you were talking about all these experiences that vaporized away. Now
Mhm.
that you're living your life again, did you feel any different, or did that change anything that you did differently now that you're back and you're living your life?
Yeah, I came back and it felt like my silver cord was vaporized. So I came back, but the body that I was coming back into was pretty gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came back and I knew my personality. And so I could be the same Navjit, but inside of that outer shell, it was just an empty vacuum. That's how I felt when I first came back for the first few years. I couldn't see my own face in my own mind. I didn't know myself. My body, I couldn't tell which was my left side, which was my right side. In my own mind, it just felt like my body was kind of like this. And it didn't matter how many times I would look in the mirror and I would see that it was fine. Everything was turned inside out in my mind and in my consciousness. And that has taken a long time to rebuild from the inside. And I don't know if many people understand what that experience is like when you have the body and you still have the personality, but the essential self is all mixed up.
Yeah, mixed for sure. Well,
Yeah.
that's a lot of stress though for think about actually leaving your body and coming back. I mean, how your mind is able to even wrap around that is beyond belief, right? And
Yeah.
I guess the thing that really strikes me about your story too, though, and something that really I think we all deal with is that wasn't even good enough, or I didn't even do that right, or
Right.
when you're
Yeah.
trying to
I mean,
let
so exactly right. And I put so much pressure on myself of, well, the other thing is that sometimes people have near-death experiences and they come back and they're healed, right?
yeah,
So I come back, I'm in a burnt body.
hmm
And so I was hoping for some miracles. I mean, I prayed, and I didn't care. I called on everything in creation to please stop this pain for my son. And because there didn't seem to be anything, I didn't feel anything. That also made me feel like, oh, I'm alone. Like that really put a real doubt, like not doubt, but like it struck me deeply
I would
how
imagine.
alone I was in that moment. Because up until then, the universe has been an ally. Like I've meditated and I've manifested things. And even in the hardest of times, I found light and sustenance and support. And here I was. And, I felt like I have been doing good works. I've been being kind, and not that I deserve to be helped, but I just thought that something would happen to support me in that moment.
Mhm.
And the fact that it didn't was very, 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 very hard, to have to handle the pain by myself to the
Now
extent that I felt the pain. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Now that you're on this side of it, when
Yeah.
you look back, do you see that there was support or things that you had missed when you were in the midst of that struggle to get back to some sense of normalcy?
Um, it's interesting because it was a very, very bad situation that we were in, right?
Mhm.
But even within that, we got off lightly. My son and I, our faces didn't get burnt. My body's burnt. I don't know if you can see some of the burns. You can't really, but you can a bit. But a lot of my body is burnt and it's covered.
Mhm.
But my face didn't get burned. And that made it a little easier, right? I know many people do have burnt faces. And what I mean about that is that to heal facial skin, it takes way more than it takes to heal this, because the lips, this area under the eyes, you can't just do a regular skin graft for the face or the lips. It's very, very difficult, painful process to heal the face. We were lucky that we didn't have to have any amputations. I was in and out of burns units, and some real horror stories of 80% of people's bodies burnt, amputations, people not surviving. So that for me was the universe looking after me, looking out for me. I can interpret it that way.
Mhm.
And the other side of that conversation for me was when I was meditating one day after many months after the accident. And what I got was, this is the message that I got, was that no, you won't have any miracles to help you. You won't have any special way out of this. You're going to
Mhm.
experience the pain. so that you know what it takes, how deep you have to dig into yourself to find your way out, find your way to healing, to find your way to how you keep your mind strong.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned from that message and this actual journey is that I can pretty much sit with anyone now in terms of pain and sit with them. Not that I'm trying to heal them, but I can actually sit with them and I know what pain is, inside out, outside in, because those bandage changes, daily bandage changes for a year and a half, being scrubbed, the wounds being scrubbed and so on. I know what that is, and I know how the impact on the mind and what it takes and why the mind breaks. I understand a lot of that. So that's been the gift. That is the gift of this suffering, this pain, was to be able to understand pain in a very deep and very personal way. Yeah.
I want to go back to one thing, and then I want to come back to what you just said, but let everybody know how your husband and your mother-in-law are, because I'm sure there are people that are waiting to know how that turned out for them.
So my husband, this is a really interesting part. So he was just swimming.
Mm-hmm.
He was snorkeling. And so his story is he heard something very, very loud. And he thought maybe it was like a tourist boat going by or something, or a big yacht or something, and going fast. So he just dove deeper because he didn't want to be in the way or anything. And then when he came up for air, he saw all the fire and the debris. And he figured out that a plane had crashed. So he just said survivors and dove down to where the plane had crashed. And it was whilst he was doing that he saw a body floating by that had been decapitated, and then another body in the plane. There were only two bodies. And then because there was so much blood, he knew he just had to get out of the water because of shocks. And that was his story. So he actually came out from that experience, pretty shocked by what had just happened, but had no idea that myself and my son are burned. And it was only later that he began to pick up the thread of what's happening. So he was physically fine, as was my mother-in-law. They both just were lucky that the plane just kind of went between where they were both happening to swim, like in that window, and didn't touch them. I mean, there was fire and stuff all around, but they just were not hit by anything. And so both of them are very healthy, very strong, and thank goodness, because we needed them to help us get to the next stop. Yeah.
So the other part of what you were talking about, which is important, is that a lot of us go through issues in our life that we feel are too hard, or we just want to give up, or, so many things as human beings we go through that we just want to throw in the towel. But yet you had this horrific situation that happened to you with an excruciating amount of pain and a long journey to recovery. And still you're able to, even though I'm sure you had your ups and your downs, your good moments and your bad moments, you were able to hold on to going forward and creating more out of your life. And I feel like that's such an important story for people to remember, that no matter how bad things could get, that we always find something to move forward with.
Right. That's right. I remember saying to myself right at the beginning that this accident was not going to be the defining point of my life. Like, it was going to, I just remember saying it to myself, like, the accident is going to be like, somebody's going to say, oh, do you remember that accident you were in? I'm going to be like, what do you mean? Like, it's so gone, because there's been so many other more interesting, wonderful things that I'm excited about, engaged in, that's just like a little blip in my life of experiences. And I just remember giving myself that script just to kind of keep me going, and to give myself this sense of like, yeah, I am going to have a great life. And it doesn't mean about how much money I make, but like, I'm going to feel whole and content in myself. And I think that really helped me to kind of project a a future script in which I was content, I was happy, I was, in with family, like I gave myself that. And there were many days where it was completely the opposite.
Yeah.
There were times when I remember, almost like crawling to the bathroom to go use the bathroom, and just wishing that I could just end it, because I couldn't bear the thought or the knowing of another bandage change the next day, and not only mine but my son's, to
Mhm.
watch him have to go through the pain that I knew what it was like. So he would get his bandage changes first, and then it would be my time. So I'd have to watch him and hold him
Mhm.
for about an hour and a half whilst he had his bandage changes, like sing to him, try and distract him. And
Mhm.
then my husband would take him and take him out, because to stay whilst I was having my bandage change would have been, because sometimes I had to scream because it was that painful, or I could be crying, or it was just a lot. And yeah, to say, okay, I'm going to be ready for it again tomorrow. I mean, that was the not funny, but really like atrocious thing, was like, oh, I'm preparing for today, but know that I'm going to do exactly the same thing tomorrow. Exactly the same thing for who knows how long. And then, I had this terrible fear that I could get any number of diseases,
Mhm.
because so much of my skin is open.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that kills people with burns, is infection, because you're so exposed. And that was, scary to me, because like I would think, gosh, if I died, what about my son?
Mhm.
What's going to happen to him? And so just dealing with that level of mind fear and trying to kind of
Yeah.
handle that, never mind the pain. And so it's that kind of future projection, negative projections.
Mhm.
I had to kind of learn to just hold it. And what happened is that I I had to just kind of, what I did is I made my world much smaller.
Mm.
Well, I couldn't do anything frivolous like talk about movies or what's happening in this person's life or this or that. All I had energy for was to spend a couple of hours with my son a day, just kind of, oh, how's it going? What do you do? Like keeping him cheery and connected. And then the rest of the time was dealing moment to moment to moment to moment with the pain. And so resilience is really learned is learned the hard way, which
Yeah.
is you get up regardless, right?
But I
Yeah.
like what you said, because you're talking about making your world smaller. And I think that's a part of what helps us to go through hard times is if we look at the bigger picture, then
Mm-hmm.
we can get discouraged or overloaded or feel defeated. But if
Mm-hmm.
we do what you said, make the world smaller where you're just taking one moment at
Yeah.
a time. And I
Yes.
know that you had your ups and downs with, giving up or not giving up. That bigger picture, though, is that each day you took that step forward. Each
That's right.
day you made something else work so you could keep moving forward and making, I think that for me, the visual in that, I think that helps everybody would just make your world smaller.
Yes, manageable, and have people around you that are not taking energy from you.
Yes.
That's really one of the things that I remember, is
Mhm.
that all kinds of people wanted to come, and it felt, a lot of them, it was just kind of like a spectacle, even though they're friends, and they don't know how to be in that situation. They want entertainment. They want to talk. No, please just do the laundry and leave.
Mhm.
Just do the food shopping and
Mhm.
leave. And most people don't know that when people are in an extreme situation, those kind of things are so helpful. I remember one of our neighbors, when they found out, when we got back to where we were living, all they did is came and they brought 3 bags of food,
Mm.
left it at the door, and said, please let us know if you need anything else. They didn't even want to see me, because they knew I was so vulnerable, and
Mm.
also vulnerable in the sense of I didn't want to expose myself to anybody else's illness on top of what I'm trying to recover from. Yeah, just people who can just caretake in the most unobtrusive way possible. Yeah.
That's a really big tip, because I
Yeah.
think even in small things when you're overloaded, like I mean not like I, stub my toe or something like that, but when we're not dealing with the extent of what you dealt with, to
Mhm.
know how to be the person on the other side, and because I feel like as people, we always want to make the other person feel better. We
Right.
want to do something to take
Right.
that pain away, when
Right.
really we're being more intrusive than we are being helpful. So
Yeah.
just knowing that I can do something for you and you're going to understand why I'm doing that, and then I can walk away and let
Right.
you
Exactly.
heal.
There's two things I wanted to share with you. One, something that I found really interesting was that when somebody cried with me
Mhm,
when I was in pain, it really made a difference to me.
mhm,
Like when they felt and where I was,
mhm,
that made it touched me. Like it made me realize like I was really in a bad place. Like
mhm.
sometimes people come, oh, you'll be fine. Gosh, if anybody, somebody actually said this to me, if anybody can handle this, it's you.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, well, I have no choice.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no choice but to be here and
Right.
do the best that I can. And so when sometimes somebody would come, I had two friends, one of them came and she just cried.
Mhm,
And it really helped me because it made it okay for me to be sad
mhm,
about what I was experiencing and where I was at. Because I know that I can be optimistic for myself. And so for when she came and cried, it also gave me the permission to be sad about what I was feeling because I didn't feel, because I
mhm,
thought if I let myself be sad, then am I giving up? Am I letting myself go into
mhm,
a downward spiral? So that was a really safe thing that felt helpful to me. The other thing, which was really fun, is that before we had gone, we had ordered an incubator because we knew we were coming back from our holiday and it was going to be our son's birthday. So we had ordered this incubator and these duck and chicken, fertilized duck and chicken eggs. So when we got home, um, we had this fertilizer going with these duck and chicken eggs. And then within like a week or two, we had baby chicks
Oh
and
my.
ducklings in the house, swimming in the bath. We
Oh
had
no.
ducklings in the bath, little chicks running around in the house. We had a butterfly nest, and all these butterflies came out. So in some ways, I remember like I felt this tremendous joy, even though I was in pain.
Mhm,
And like it was like life was showing me like rejuvenation, life happens even when there's a near death experience and you're in pain, that
mhm.
there's like real chickens and real little ducklings in our house
That's
and
fun.
real butterflies fluttering around. It was quite mad but magical, and it really happened. I have photographs of little ducklings in our bath.
What did you do with them after all that?
So it was from this sanctuary. So once they've hatched, you then take them back to them and
Oh,
they get
oh my
composed. So you
God.
just get to experience.
Oh,
It's great for kids to see
yeah.
little chicks hatching and little ducklings hatching, little butterflies hatching. Yeah, it was awesome.
That, I think in some ways that's healing, because you see that this life that's being created, right? And it
Yeah,
just keeps growing. But the other thing I want to say, though, is going back to one of the things I think we do when we're in a crisis mode naturally is we feel like, especially as we become more enlightened and aware of more than just ourselves, we go in like we don't give ourselves that permission to be sad or to feel the feelings
yeah,
that we're going through. And I
yeah,
love that you acknowledge that it was good for you to cry with your friend, good
yeah.
for you to feel those feelings, because I feel like that helps to process then what a horrendous experience you went through, and you can't even put words on it.
That's
But
right.
it would have been a lot worse in the end if you wouldn't have done that and allowed all of that emotion to go through
Right.
you.
That's so true. Thank you for pointing that out. It is because I remember my mother-in-law, when we were in the hospital in the Bahamas, I was going fine, 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 all of it's fine. And then I had my first bandage change. And so they wheeled me out and they put me into this water thing, and then they scrubbed my whole body. This is like the first time. This is the first scrubbing
Uh-huh.
that I was getting. And it was so painful. It was beyond. I thought once I was bandaged up, that's it. They'll just keep putting back. I had no idea about this part of the healing process. And then my mother-in-law was wheeling me back, and I just started crying and crying and crying and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And she said, "Oh, good, 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 good. Now you're going to feel better. You're going to start feeling better." And I remember thinking to myself, like, why is that good? But I now know that was the first acknowledgement that I made to myself that I was in a bad situation. Like before that, it was just like, I'm just going through the motions. I'm still running on adrenaline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first moment that it hit me.
Yeah.
Oh, this is real. This is awful. This is terrible. I don't want to be here. I don't like this. I'm beginning to, that was when the breakdown of my mind began to happen, was that after that first bandage change and the recognition of like, this is hell and I'm here. Yeah.
The other thing that's really important for people to take from this as well, and I've done this during really dark times or really hard times, is having those mantras to keep you going, to keep you more in a positive state.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have something to put in a positive way, then you're just going to keep going down that rabbit hole and you're not going to come out. So I think that having them, like I feel like you probably had developed them in that particular situation as you went along. But the point was that you had them.
In all honesty, someday, because I think it just depends on different people and different situations. There have been other times when it's been really, really, really hard and really, really dark, where exactly that stuff was the stuff that kept me going, kept me together. But it was really challenging and very different with actual physical pain, because I tried meditating. I meditated. I did affirmations. I did mantras. I played music. I mean, I did everything, but pain always trumped whatever I was doing. And that was a really interesting lesson for me, because I was hoping that somehow I would get into a different loop and I would bypass the pain. Not much really bypass the pain. There were moments of like when the thing that bypassed the pain was me getting out of the story. And what I mean by that, and it was really hard for me to acknowledge at the time, but I think it's really helpful to share with people, is that when we are in a pain situation or where we are in a breakdown situation, we are in a story where we're the victim, right? This is happening to me. I'm burnt, I've got cancer. I'm the real actual victim, right? This bad stuff is happening. What doesn't help is staying in that narrative and repeating that narrative to ourselves. And so I remember in the bandage changes, it would start like, oh, I'm so this pain, the scrubbing, this, and then a part of me was watching the narrative part of my mind telling all these sad stories. And the part that was watching it would say, does it help? Why do you keep repeating these negative things? Why are you imagining these sad futures? Why are you remembering these sad stories about yourself? Is this actually helping you? And that's when I began to realize that the thing that could break through the pain was not being attached to any story about myself, not being attached to any past or any future outcome. Because anytime I became attached to the past or the future outcomes, then I'm like trying to be someone. And if I want to try and be someone, then I've got all these stories about who I am from the past and who I think I have to be. it's just too much story. And so what I learned in that was let go. And with the letting go of all of myself again and again and again and again, I kind of dissociated too. Does that make sense? That pain makes you dissociate. There wasn't much to keep me together. And so again, like I said before, pain was a really powerful teacher for me, because I could, in the experience, make notes because I'm experiencing through my body. And then after the fact, I could then begin to unpack little pockets of these experience and say, okay, what did I learn here? What can I bring from this experience that can help other people slow it down so that they can understand who they are in this experience? And that's powerful. And I think that a lot of us rush through a lot of our experiences, whether painful or not, and we don't understand who we are. And I think that with pain, for me, it taught me to slow down so I could unpack, who am I in this experience? This is the most painful, but who am I here? What are my values? What do I stand for? How do I show up in pain?
I love that you were able to take that situation and make it into a learning lesson, because each situation, whether we like it or not, we go through, is always for development of our personality, of our person as a human, creating a more higher evolution in our soul's being. And if we can remember that, I mean, it sucks, and we can't really explain the why that this is what we chose to do, in the most simple of experiences to the most horrific. Each experience we have is a lesson. So it was beautiful that you were able to step back and say, even through this agony that I'm going through, I'm going to come out the other side and say, what did I learn, or how can I make my life better? Because in essence, what you did, you're talking about NDEs for one, which in our conversation brought a lot of other people out that said, I had one of these and I didn't even know it. I didn't know, I wasn't able to connect to the fact that I had this experience, or the fact that my life really sucks right now. And, I don't know how to get out of it, but I'm going to keep moving forward and find a way through, like a lot of the examples you came through and you experienced during your horrific part of your healing, is able to show people, even with our everyday lives, we can still tap into those things and use it to make our life stronger and our life better.
That's right. Thank you. That was really well distilled from everything that I said in all that time. And you've just put it into nice little bite-sized, digestible pieces of information. It's so true. And I think that what you were saying, bringing it back to other people's near-death experiences, is that that's one version that's been studied by research, has been done, but there are many other experiences that people have. And remember, one of the people that we were talking to had that experience of going out of her body in her sleep. Remember, she had that near-death experience in her sleep. And so I think it's as an area of study, it's all very interesting, whether it's about people going out of their bodies in their sleep and helping someone. I remember sharing one of these stories with you, or people having experiences that were very quick, that they just didn't realize that that's what had happened, that they had actually gone out. And what we were also talking about is like, when did you figure it out? How long did it take to realize, oh, this is what happened? And what do you want it to mean? What do you want to do with this experience? It's a great story, right? So my story, the accident, is a great story, and there's some lessons. But what do I want to do with sharing this story? What is valuable to me? These are the things that I feel like I came back with. One is that when you die, your stream of your consciousness doesn't go blank and you're somewhere else. It's just like when we dream, we don't quite remember when we fell asleep.
Right.
but we just are in the dream now, and the dream is important, and we're engaged, and this and that's happening, and then you're somewhere else. It's kind of like that. That's what it was like for me, but it was very vivid, like those dreams that you have where it feels like you're really, really present and strong and stuff happening, but it's different time and you can do things. So that's one. There's no committee that meets you to announce to you or welcome you and say you are now dead officially. Look, there's the paperwork. Please sign on the dotted line. You're not going back. You've done it. And here are your good deeds. Here are your bad deeds. So now please go that way. There's no one telling you where to go. I didn't experience that. Maybe others do. My sense is that it's just like in dreams. Oh, you're just in these conversations and you're moving along. You're just going along with things. And then as you go along, you begin to realize and discover like, oh, okay, whenever your soul is ready, right, to settle into that knowledge. Because for some people, when they go over, the immediate knowledge is very shocking that they've passed. And I've communicated with some people who have died suddenly, and they've communicated the shock. They didn't realize that they would die. It was not their intention. They weren't thinking about it, but it was an accident and they died. And they're like, what now? Where do I go? What happens? And so there is that time for the soul or the spirit to kind of settle into, I'm not going back. I don't have that body. I don't have those relationships. This is a different self. This is me in a different world in a way. So that's one thing that I learned. Another thing that I learned from that experience is that this is an area that is extremely valuable for us to explore because we're all heading this direction. Well, like it or not, it's a return ticket, everyone. It wasn't a one way, it's a round trip. And so I want to begin to know, what does that mean, and to talk about death and dying, and to look at what we're afraid of. What are the things? Yeah.
It's interesting. And you said the word too right after that, but it's interesting what you said, because we don't really know what's on the other side because we're comfortable here. But when you actually had gone through that process, sorry, I'm having a moment here. When you went through that process, were you afraid? Were you ever afraid during that time period?
No, because it's not about it. It's like getting on a plane. You're not thinking about, you're just moving. It was happening so fast. I think that, like I said to you, because I went in so on the periphery of that, I didn't go deep into death. And, I just touched, I felt like I just stepped over, experienced a lot of stuff, and then whoosh, I came back. No, I didn't even have to tell you.
Like that's the key, though, because even though you didn't go all the way in, and we wouldn't be having this conversation, you didn't have that fear at that moment, and that's, I think that's what we are most hesitant about. I want to say afraid of, right? It's the actual change. But
right. You've nailed it. I forgot that part. That was one of the things. The other thing that I came back with that I forgot is that not to be afraid. It's all okay. It's all really so okay. And one of the things that I learned was that when somebody's body is going through, like, because I saw my body like that, I wasn't experiencing that when I was out. My body might have been doing all kinds of stuff, but I wasn't experiencing that. And so what I learned is that the physical body is going to go through its shutdown processes. Right. But the spirit, when somebody's going through dying, weeks, months, whatever it is, they are already going out, just like when we dream. Yes. And they go out into the light, they feel the curvature of the universe or the consciousness, and then they come back and they go out. And that's why they begin to see loved ones around their bed, or they start talking about people who passed 30 years ago, because they're not contained in the same shell, the same membrane of consciousness as we are. That membrane is becoming more and more perforated, or diffused, so that they can go in and out and other consciousness can stream in, so that they're tapping into the unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I feel that as we pass that thing called death and into those strata of consciousness, you do begin to feel the wholeness, the love, the relief,
Mm-hmm.
the relief, not intellectually always, because I feel good. The I isn't the anchoring point.
Right.
The love is the thing. You're just moving towards it. You're not having to protect this I anymore, this self. And that is a relief. Like, you're like, oh, finally, just like when you get into a hot bath, you can just let go. It's that kind of a feeling of just letting go, but without going, I'm letting go.
And that's important because we have the I while we're here, because we're here to be a human in this experience. But when we go home, then we're a part of the collective, even though we're still a soul that's individual from every other soul, we're still a part of a collective.
Right.
So it's a much more different, way of being while we're here. And so I get what you're saying. I think we need to connect to our I while we're here on this planet. But when we go back home, we don't need to connect to that I anymore.
And it's so lovely. I was going to ask you a question, because you work in this field. What have you learned from when you've communicated with people who've passed? Have they taught you about these transitions, or what they feel are valuable things to know as you head towards that phase of dying and moving into the next part of your soul's journey?
Well, I think one of the things that I love about the way that you talk is that everybody isn't going to have the same experience. And I think that's for a reason, that we don't all have the same experience, because we're all going to be doing something different, I guess you could say, whether we go home or we have to go through our life review, or don't have to, as we are able to go through our life review, or if we come back to live in this world. So that we're all going to experience it in different ways for different reasons, like you had your own specific reasons. The thing that I find when I'm communicating to loved ones on the other side is they really want us to be rest assured that it's really not there. It's just love there. It's just unconditional love. They're at peace there. They're doing the things that they are there to do on the other side, which is still evolving and growing and learning, and they're always with us. In fact, I was doing a reading for someone today who said, I just want to know that my mother's okay. And I could feel her pain and her sadness, but her mom was the most beautiful soul, and she was just so much more concerned with her daughter that was here than she is with herself, because they're at peace on the other side. And she had their family dog with her, and she's watching over the family and the way that the family is growing and evolving. And so, no, there's not that, that there's no fear.
There's no angst.
No, there's not. It's all just pure unconditional love on the other side. Every soul that I have spoken to for somebody has never had any kind of negativity or
That's fantastic.
Fear like this. Oh, it's really beautiful. The only thing that sometimes will happen is, because we're communicating and the person wants to know certain things about maybe the way they passed, or the end of their life or something like that, we can feel then that angst before they pass. But once they pass, no, it's just pure love.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. And it's like I tell people all the time, and I think that we don't believe we're all mediums, really. It's just, are you willing to put your awareness to the spiritual world? And through the experience that I've had with passing, once our soul leaves the body, it's no longer in that pain and that agony anymore, because you've now separated and you just go to pure love. And so I feel like every soul that I've spoken to on the other side, I feel like they want to tell that story. That's what they want to share and tell people. It's not to worry about going home, because it is going to be. In fact, I was talking to somebody just the other day about, the fear of dying comes from are being grounded here and having this life that we know, because we don't know what's on the other side because we've forgotten. And so we're more afraid to be here and die than we would be to be there and being in connection with all of our loved ones every day, and not having the anger. Like in this particular situation, there was some real problems going on between the family, and that mother doesn't have that problem anymore. Family does, but the mother doesn't have that problem anymore.
When my dad had passed, I remember, because he came to me pretty much immediately, because 2 hours before he passed, I was on my way to go see him. I was in Las Vegas at the airport, and my sister was able to get on FaceTime and hold the phone up to my dad, because we didn't know how long. It could be days, could be weeks. We didn't really know. And so he was kind of like in and out of consciousness, but somehow he managed to just kind of still his consciousness, open his eyes and look at the camera and just say, "Ha, beta," which means yes, beloved. And then he was gone again. And I felt the moment he died. My near-death experience helped me to trust what I was experiencing. So I thought I would feel if my husband or my mother-in-law had died, I would feel it. Well, that was the truth when my dad died. I felt it, and I had this. It was so interesting because I felt like I wanted to make this sound. Like it was like this primordial connection that because I came from him. There was this sound like an animal would make, like when it loses something, but I'm at an airport, so I can't literally do that. So I remember thinking, okay, what can I do? And so I had this thought, I want to sit in some light, and there were these big bay of windows, and I just went and sat in the streaming sunlight. And then into my consciousness popped my dad saying, "Oh, can I go now?" And I saw this image of him being in the hospital, jumping off the hospital bed and just smiling and laughing at me. And I said, "Dad, you can go wherever you want now. You know, you've done the hard part. You've done the hard part. You're good to go." And then he would feel me start beginning to get sad, because that meant, oh, he's gone now. Like it's fun to kind of have this chat with him, but also recognizing like, oh, he's actually passed. And then he would just say to me, "Look at me," and just get my attention to look at his face. And he would say, "Remember me like this, not like you saw me in my death throes, but remember me like this." And I would say, "Dad, of course I'm going to remember you like this." And one of the messages he gave to me was to not fall into sorrow or grief, because he said, "Look at me where I am." And what he meant by look at me was actually really open my eyes and see that he was in such joy, such unadulterated joy. And he was just beaming this beautiful love energy. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish Dad you'd been like this more when you were alive. Like, it's so great. Like I wished like I'd gotten to spend more time with that of him than him that we had as children and as adults. And that was his gift to me, was don't spiral into this sense of sorrow or loss or grief. Look at actually where I'm at. Look at where I'm actually at. I'm in this bliss. I'm in this love. I'm in this light. And so that really helped me to process his death in a very different way. Very different.
Sorry, that one stuck up on me. I agree with you. And it's something that that I like to talk about often. We never die. Our souls never die. We keep going on. And I feel, from my beliefs, that we come here with a certain plan to go through our life, because there's lessons that we want to learn in this life. And so I love how you said, I wish you would have been like that, because I had that same feeling towards my father when he passed. And I didn't really know him like I would like to have known him. But through this journey, I've gotten to know more about him and the reasons why he was the way he was. And he's that's the other thing about it. When you're talking to your loved ones on the other side, they'll like totally fess up to why they did what they they did, and that it was really not a wise thing to do, and it caused a lot of pain, but this is what they were here to do as a part of their life lesson, because they're not that way on
No.
the other side. They're just not. So it's very interesting to
Yeah, what I got from that is, when I said I wish there'd been more of you, what I learned from that is seeing my dad and what loving him so much is that why I was so committed in my love for him, even through all the hardships and this and that. Underneath all of that always was this being that I knew and recognized, and together we were going through all the little things, me being the daughter, him being the father. But what allowed us to do that is the love, the magnetism of the love and respect that we have for each other, and just a lot of humor.
Yeah.
And it's just that we needed to get something through some things,
Mhm.
and just to see like, oh, now that's why I love my dad.
Right.
That's why I was here with him and he was here with me, is we
Right.
have this love with each other.
Mhm.
And our lives, without that, we wouldn't have been able to do this journey together.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. So, one of the things I want to ask you is, what do you think is the biggest nugget that you took away from your experience? And what would you want the viewer to really know about your experience
Oh
and your lesson?
gosh. I would just say to everybody, relax.
Mhm.
Really relax. Just really, really relax. Everything that we're pushing
Mm.
isn't worth pushing for. You just like there's very simple things, I notice everything, trees, the sky,
Mhm.
children playing, people arguing, all of that, everything feels like a tremendous gift to me. Like everything, even like bad things, I know that when I leave this plane, I'm going to miss. A part
Yeah.
of me is going to be so grateful that I got to embody and touch and be part of very intense emotions. Like it's like having the opportunity to to sail on a boat and go through all those things. What an adventure.
Mhm.
What an adventure this is. I guess that's what I want people to embrace, that even on the dullest of days, this
Yeah.
is an adventure, just to remember to just open yourself a little bit more. And in the most painful days,
Mhm.
be humbled, like, wow, how strong you are that you can be present.
Mhm.
This level of stretching of your soul, how smart, how wise, how brilliant you are to give yourself the opportunity to stretch, because pain, suffering makes us have to stretch. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's a very profound privilege to be a human.
It really is. And I don't think that we really realize that a lot of the time. And I'm sure there'll be other times as we go into our life in the future, and we'll forget it at times as well,
Oh,
because I can really suck at times. But I feel like the most important thing is to remember, no matter how hard it gets, there's ways to come back into balance, and that's what you're going to be striving for, to go through the process and give yourself the time and the love and the peace and the energy that you need to go through those processes. But remember that there's always going to be light on the other side. It's never going to always be the way that it is right now. There's always going to be the better. There's always going to be the light. There's always going to be the tomorrow. And that's what you really showed as you went through your process. And I hope that people were really able to pick up on those moments that you had that clarity and were able to fight to go forward and move forward, and to keep some sense of composure and
yeah.
sanity through that insanity.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the light and it's going to get better. Thank you, thank you, thank you for saying that and reminding us all about that, because it is a choice.
Mhm.
It is a choice, and I think that we're all learning how to make those choices.
Mhm.
There is grace, there is light, and there is support.
Yes,
All of that is available, and it's knowing to trust ourselves to ask for support. It's knowing to, or that book that comes in your way, or you happen to watch a YouTube video.
exactly.
We're here. We're all here to help each other out. I might not have it. You might have it. A viewer might have it. But we all have knowledge and we all have that capacity to move towards the light. And it isn't a battle between light and dark.
No.
It's about that light that I'm talking about, that you're talking about, is wholeness, integration. It's that divine love. We are part of that. We don't have to earn it. We don't have to be worthy of it. It's that's the light. Yeah, that's the light.
Exactly. And that's very well said. So I hope that everybody was able to take from this and be encouraged from this, that don't compare either, because that was one of the things that we saw. Compare your in any, I mean, we talked about this, but yeah, exactly. Any part of our life, we're all going to have unique situations to our life. And just remember that no matter how dark it gets, just breathe through it and try to get to the next day, because you're going to find that each day will bring more and more light to you. So don't be discouraged. I also want to put in here too, somebody who was advertising. If you come on my show and you advertise, I will block you. So don't advertise on my show for your good. So that's why you got blocked, for the person who got blocked. Sorry, I would love for you to listen to this, and I would love you to be part of the audience. But if you're going to advertise, I'm going to block you. So I'm just sharing that right now. So thank you so much for sharing your story, your experience, your lessons. There was so much to this, and I hope that people are able to take away from this to have the courage to go forward.
Thank you. And if people want to contact me, they can reach me through my website, which is tenderlogic.com, tenderlogic.com. And as you can see my name, you can always reach me through Instagram or some way like that. Yeah.
And I'll try to put that. You want to put it in the chat? It'll be there for people to see.
Oh, okay, sure. Let's just do that.
It'll be marked. It will be bookmarked in history. You're very welcome, Karen. I hope it was beneficial to you and that you were able to learn from this conversation.
And if anybody has questions, they can ask me or they can text me or something like that. That's perfectly
absolutely fine. Thank you for putting that in there. I was too much into the chats. I forgot to mention that. So you
I only just remembered because I just saw yours. I was like, oh wait, I need to let people know where they can find me. My digital address.
Yeah.
Psychic.
Back. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing this story. And again, reach out to Navjit.
Navjit. You know, Joanne, if you can say have feet, Navjit. Yeah. Navjit.
I said it right, and then I got into my head and said it wrong. Because you know what? If you think that you're going to do something, you're right. If you think you're not going to do something, you're right. So there's the example of that. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for sharing. Take care, and I will see you next week. And thank you very much for being here.
Bye, everyone. It was lovely to be here.
Bye.